In a Romanian cave discovered in 2002, archaeologists found remains of modern humans dating back to 37,800 years. The history of Romania has always been strictly tied with its geographical position, lying at the crossroads of historical trading and migratory routes of powerful empires. Romania was influenced by its neighbors, but managed to retain its traditions while incorporating new cultural elements to evolve. In many ways, tracking the history of Romania means tracking the history of the human race. For it was here, in the European lands, that some of the first Homo sapiens migrated. Evidence found in the caves near the Danube River suggests that the oldest humans came here to settle and mix with the Neanderthals. At the beginning of the Neolithic period, Romanian territory was inhabited by people who migrated from distant lands. Out of these, the most important group was the Dacians. Modern Romanians associate themselves with this race and claim to have descended from them. There is little archaeological evidence of the early Dacians in the ground, but the writings of the Greeks and the Romans talk of these magnificent people, with whom they traded and fought. The earliest written sources about the kingdom of Dacia mention King Burebista and the valor of the Dacian people. As it is the fate of all empires, Dacia had to fall eventually, and it happened because of Roman expansion during the era of Emperor Trajan, who was responsible for the second largest expansion in Roman history after Augustus. The Dacians had defeated the Romans a century prior in the Battle of Histria, and again in the Battle of Tepe in 88. Trajan waged war against the most famous Dacian king, Decebalus, and managed to defeat them in the Second Battle of Tepe. Decebalus complied with the Romans for a while, but the tensions kept rising and eventually boiled over in the form of the Second Roman-Dacian War. Due to the treacherous betrayal of noblemen and close advisors, the water supply and food of the Dacian capital, Sarmizegetusa Regia, dwindled, and it fell to the Romans. The Romans stayed in Romania territory until the 3rd century CE. It is believed that the intermingling of the Romanian people with the Dacian people brought about the blend of Romanian ethnicity that we are familiar with today. But this sense of identity did not flourish immediately. It took years before the passage of time dulled egos and brought about a sense of unified identity. The first century of Roman rule was relatively prosperous. The period between Emperor Hadrian's and Marcus Aurelius's reigns was generally peaceful. But things took a turn for the worse in the reign of Septimius Severus. Constantine was the only consequent Roman emperor interested in the Dacian land, but it was a very limited form of integration, as he was only interested in the cities on the bank of the Danube River, Suceava and Drobeta. These cities came under Roman influence, which continued in some form or the other until the 7th century. As various tribes started attacking, the region became unstable and the economy declined. The Romans abandoned the province of Dacia, which left it exposed to the Goths. After the fall of the Roman Empire, 3 principalities emerged in modern-day Romania: Transylvania, Wallachia, and Moldavia. Over the years, they all had rulers that either hated each other or worked against a common foe. For Christian Europe, the common foe would often be the Ottoman Empire. As the Roman traditions left the land, migration started towards Dacia. With the arrival of different tribes, the population became diverse. Modern scholars refer to these people as Daco-Romans. At the end of the 10th century, there was an influx of Christianity from Bulgaria. The penetration of the Slavs was particularly significant. The earliest signs of Christianity in Dacia can be traced back to the 4th century, but various words in the modern Romanian language have their roots in Slavic languages. At the end of the 9th century, the Hungarians started expanding into Transylvania, and after the fall of the Bulgarian Empire, they did so easily. 2 other groups influenced the history of the old Dacian region at this point. The first group was the Zeklers, a people of mysterious and unknown origins that are thought to be related to Hungarians. The second group arrived from the lands between the Elbe River in the east and the Rhine River to the west. They were partially Germans. Contemporary writers call the latter group Flandrisi, Saxony, and Teutoni. Their migration started in the 12th century and lasted until the end of the 13th century, by which point almost all of them were referred to as Saxons. During the 14th century, Transylvania remained a part of the Kingdom of Hungary, but its 3 nationalities, the Hungarians, the Zeklers, and the Saxons, remained largely autonomous from each other. Moldavia spent some time as a Polish fiefdom and then gained independence. Wallachia and Moldavia were both independent, and their ruling class kept close relations with the Church. As a land caught between the East and West, Romania's close alignment with Eastern Orthodoxy played a vital role in establishing the national identity of Romanians. When the Ottoman Empire started gaining power and headed towards them, Prince Mircea the Elder, a great ruler of Wallachia, kept the enemy at bay. He was the grandfather of the most popular figure in Romanian history and fiction, Vlad Tepes. After the fall of Constantinople, the three principalities were a thorn in the Sultan's side. They managed to maintain their independence, partly by paying tribute to the Ottomans and joining the other European powers in the anti-Ottoman struggle. Here we have to talk about three major rulers in Romanian history. The first one being Vlad Tepes, also known as Vlad the Impaler. Vlad is a controversial figure in world history, and some portray him as a ruthless murderer. The most famous example of this is that he served as inspiration for the famous Count Dracula, the character written by Bram Stoker in the late 19th century. But one has to bear in mind that Vlad was but a mortal, caught between two powerful rivals, the European monarchies and the Ottoman Empire. He is often called upon in Romanian lore to rid them of evils. Mihai Eminescu, the Romanian poet from Moldavia, wrote a historical ballad titled The Third Letter, in which he writes, "You must come, O dread Impaler, confound them to your care. Split them in two partitions, here the fools, the rascals there. Shove them into two enclosures from the broad daylight and Nile, then set fire to the prison and the lunatic asylum." The second major figure was Stefan III of Moldavia, who was responsible for releasing Vlad from captivity in Visegrad. Referred to as Athleta Christi, champion of the Christ, by Pope Sixtus VI, he is remembered for winning 46 of his 48 battles and was the first to gain a decisive victory against the Ottomans in the Battle of Vaslui in the late 15th century. The third major figure in Romanian history comes in the form of Mihai Viteazul, Michael the Brave, who is famous for uniting the three principalities that make up modern-day Romania. By the 17th century, the Greeks and Levantines had diversified the region even more. Overall, the 17th century brought various foreign influences, and writers and intellectuals were quick to adopt them and move away from medieval traditions. Although some semblance of tradition survived, most of the new foreign influences came from the West, which fostered an identity crisis between the clergy and the intellectuals. During the 18th century, the Ottomans were at war with the Habsburg Empire, which brought the Romanians closer to the political currents of Europe. The 18th century brought all three principalities, Wallachia, Moldavia, and Transylvania, to the threshold of the modern world. The economy, the political world, and the intellectual elite were drawn toward European ideas. However, it turned out that tradition was an integral part of the Romanian identity. Without it, the nation could not move forward. The only possible thing the Romanians could do was make a truce between their Eastern heritage and their desire for Western innovation and progress. Such an accomplishment of their diverse origins is not an easy one to undertake. Should all three principalities achieve freedom and autonomy, where would their future lie, the East or the West? It was a tough line to walk, and the history of Romania was deeply affected by the choices made during the late 18th and 19th centuries. During the Russo-Turkish War, Catherine II, commonly known as Catherine the Great, planned the restoration of the Byzantine Empire and the union of Wallachia and Moldavia into the Kingdom of Dacia. The kingdom would potentially serve as a buffer zone between her empire and the Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires. Other nations, including France and Britain, also showed interest in the territories. But in the end, no side managed to exert their control over Wallachia and Moldavia as they had hoped. Since everyone was willing to use them as bargaining chips, the moment forced the Romanians toward introspection. By the 18th century, the theory of Roman origins was quite attractive, as it also aligned them with the rest of Europe. The ethnic consciousness flourished, and at its heart, there was the recognition that Romanians were European people. The intellectuals in Transylvania were experiencing a somewhat similar sentiment. They maintained Eastern Orthodoxy in some forms of their religious expression, but culturally, they were oriented towards Europe, supporting the radical ideas of the Enlightenment. Between the indecision and to some extent the failure of the larger powers surrounding them, the Romanians started to rally together. Under the rule of Alexandru Ian Cuza, who would later abdicate, Wallachia and Moldavia came together. Carol I of the Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen family took the throne next, and Romania was officially established under him. The royal family became a fundamental part of Romania's history, shaping its politics and social constructions. In the 20th century, Romania experienced the horrors of the two world wars, just like every other European nation. Romania paid a heavy price in its constant efforts to gain Transylvania. In this region, Romanians represented the majority of the population, but had no political or civil rights. They suffered many casualties, endured occupation, and changed sides just to integrate Transylvania, Bessarabia, and Bukovina. At the end of the Second World War, Romania was occupied by the Soviet Communist regime and had two choices: adapt or disappear. As part of the Eastern Bloc, Romania could not escape its fate, but did its best to preserve its independence. However, giving power to a dictator, Nicolae Ceausescu, proved a mistake. For 45 years, Romanians were influenced by his efforts and eventually overthrew him. After some turbulent years, Romania began recovering its economic prowess in the late 20th century. In the early 1990s, it had started taking its first steps toward entering European Union, but it took 17 years before it could officially become a member. It is important to note that Romania has a rich history and culture. In this modern attempt to summarize this lengthy topic, we have made the necessary concessions. Modern-day Romania has witnessed the strokes of so many historical movements. It is impossible to tie all of them neatly. For Romania, it might be impossible to shed the weight of the past, but the future still roams around the corner, full of promise. Who knows what it holds? To learn more about the history of Romania, check out our book, History of Romania, a captivating guide to Romanian history, including events such as the First Roman-Dacian War, raids of Vlad III Dracula against the Ottoman Empire, the Great War, and World War II. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free Mythology Bundle ebook while they're still available. All links are in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.